恭敬大德圣境，维持法会，及一切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱世，离苦得乐，殊真无生。Word Sangha with brave virtue out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings. Please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputoche. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa, 百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, medicine master, Buddha. 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 Medicine master does come one. 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 Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Rainbow Master, all good knowing advisors, welcome back to this is class 98 of the Dharma, using the Medicine Master Buddha as our foundation. Okay, let me see. How do I stop? Okay, end slideshow and start slideshow. Okay. As I'm looking for the slides to begin for today's class, does anyone have any questions? Anything you want to bring up? Any announcements? Anything to share? Can be any question regarding the Dharma. Every week I ask, and every week, what do I get now? Sounds of crickets. Okay.
Sir,
Yes, Ron.
I'm a cricket.
Yes, no
I want
crickets.
to ask a
No
question.
crickets today. Yes, please.
So, there's 10 fasting days in a month. How are we obliged to observe the 10 fasting days, and how should we observe the 10 fasting days? If we're,
Okay.
if we've taken the 5 precepts.
Okay, if you have taken only the 5 precepts, the
Yeah.
short answer is no. You do not have to observe the fasting days. The fasting days are usually taken by those who have uh, who are observing the 8 precepts and above. But what
Okay.
I'll do is I will explain to you, or I will share a sutra with everyone at the end of the class, which I hope by the end of when I'm done, even if you have not taken the 8 precepts, you understand why, and you would at least try in a day of every month, at least one day. Okay, because how would I put it? It's kind of like you find a place that serves really good vegan or vegetarian food. You know it's there, but you've never tasted how good it is. Now after you find out, you try to go at least once a month because you really enjoy the food. Yeah. So this one is not about enjoying food, but it's about doing something that's really good for yourself.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you, Pastor.
Yeah, you're welcome. Don't mention it. Okay, let me see. We are talking about, so we are still on the subject of Mara. And before we continue the what we have been doing the last few weeks about the epic story about Mara and the Buddha, let me show you why Mara is not a very good person, in why we don't regard Mara as a very good person. Okay. Oh, let me add. Okay. All right. So I have here um, a sutta called Vajira Sutta, or the Sutra of Sister Vajira. Okay. And there's another question. What about 3 months in a year? Swilling is asking, do we have 3 months in a year, vegetarian months? And no, there's not that I'm aware of. For 3 months in a year, I don't think that's like a formal practice, but we can talk about it at the end of the class. Thanks for the question. So if you look at the sutras, you will see that there are quite a few sutras where Mara reveals who he is in a way that's not really good. Okay, so the scenario is like this. This took place at Savatthi. We have a nun. Her name is Vajira. So she put on her robes, and she took a bowl and an outer robe, and she went into Savatthi for alms. When she had gone for alms in Savatthi and had returned from her alms round, after her meal, she went to the Grove of the Blind. Grove of the Blind is kind of like a garden. Think of like a garden, a forest grove, to spend the day. Having gone deep into the grove of the blind, she sat down at the foot of a tree for the day's abiding. What does that mean? Gone deep means she goes to a place where there are very few people, as far away from humans as practically possible, so that she won't be disturbed. And the second part of the question, sitting down at the foot of a tree, means she's practicing samadhi. She's concentrating. Then guess what? Mara, the evil one, comes along. Says wanting to arouse fear, horripilation. Is that a word? Horripilation. I copy and pasted this. Horror, I guess, the feeling of horror. So maybe someone can help Google to see if horripilation is a real word. And terror in her, wanting to make her fall away from concentration, approach her and address her in verse. Okay. So this is what Mara told her. He said, by whom was this living being created? Where is the living being's maker? Where has the living being originated? Where does the living being cease? So if you look carefully at these are questions about life that sometimes can occupy. If you are a philosopher, okay, questions like this, or with the same nature, it doesn't have to be the exact same question, but with this form of idea, can occupy you for your whole life, trying to figure things out. Who made you? Who was your creator? Where is your creator? How did you come about? And when you die, where do you go? right? These are questions of the ages. So then the nun sitting there trying to concentrate, she thinks to herself, who has recited this verse, a human being or a non-human one? And it says, the sutra says, it occurred to her, this is Mara, the evil one, who has recited this verse wanting to arouse here horripilation, that's the word again, and terror in me. Okay, let me, horripilation, let me find out what that word means. I can guess, but I'm not sure. Or,
I'm looking it up for you, Usher.
what's that?
I'm looking it up for you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, okay. Horripilation is, I already found it. Thanks, Ron. It's a very specific term that means that your hairs stand on end. It says the erection of hairs on the skin due to cold, fear, or excitement. Okay, in Hokkien, you will say mo kin chang. I'm not sure how you say it in Cantonese, but when your hairs stand on end. So that's, I didn't know there was a word for it. Okay, so she recognizes that it's Mara. And why does Mara ask these questions? Because he's trying to break her concentration. He's trying to give her something that he knows until you get enlightened, you would not be able to answer. Unless maybe you have some spiritual abilities, you can go to the heavens, you may be able to find out your possible um, uh, avenues of birth, rebirth. You won't know for sure, but you roughly can know that there will be rebirth, although you're not in control. So that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to break her concentration. So basically, these are the, how you say, the standard false topics for false thinking. Okay, sorry, the standard topics to, if you really want to cause someone to have false thinking, that uses our mundane mind, our mind consciousness, and to break someone's concentration. This is it, right? For everyone, it will be different. Okay, for some people, it will be, has your baby been fed yet? Or, have you paid your bills? Do you know who won the latest football game? It might be, different from everyone, depending on what pulls your concentration. Okay, anyway, coming back. So she replied, Mara. She said, what? Do you assume a living being, Mara? So if this was chess, this would be kind of like the what do you call it? A check move that leads to a checkmate. Okay, because she throws it back at Mara and attacks his assumption that there is actually a living being. Because in Buddhist understanding, there is what we take to be a living being is false. Shufu says taking the false for the true. A robber coming into your home and you mistake it to be your son. That's how that's the metaphor that Shufu uses, referring to the five skandhas. So she attacks Mara at his assumption because Mara is still bound by the five skandhas. So she says, what? Do you assume a living being, Mara? Do you take a position? This is purely a pile of fabrications. Here, no living being can be pinned down, meaning fabrications is another word for the five skandhas. And when she says here, no living being can be pinned down, that means within the mind and the body, our five skandhas, which includes our senses, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and then finally number 6, the mind. She says there's no living being. Says just as parts together become a chariot, fabrications create the convention of a living being. It's the combination of all this that creates what we mistakenly believe to be the self. And she says, then only stress is what comes to be. So if you make this mistake, guess what? There's only stress that waits for you, stress and affliction. Stress, what remains and falls away. Nothing but stress comes to be. Nothing but stress ceases. Then Mara's response, sad and dejected, was, she said, "Oh, she knows who I am," and he knew he couldn't do anything because I think what Sister Vajira was already an arhat, and she was far beyond the illusion of what five skandhas are. So another way to understand the five skandhas is to look at it in terms of our body and our mind, and to see that our interface with reality, how we go about life, how we measure our world around us is our five skandhas. For example, how do we watch TV? The TV is our instrument. Okay, we can only watch TV through a TV. Scientists can only measure the universe or whatever field they are in, physics or whatever it is, through their instruments. If their instruments cannot detect something, it lies beyond the scope of what the scientists can measure. So, for example, we have telescopes. We have the new telescope. What is called the? Is it Hubble? Hubble is the old one, right? Don't we have a new one? The Webb. Yes, the Webb telescope that gives us the ability, or astronomers the ability, to look further into the universe than ever before, with more detail, that can capture more spectrums of light and wavelengths that enables them to learn more about the universe. Before that, they were pretty much restricted. Their understanding, their theories were pretty much restricted to what they could measure, and then Webb gave them a whole new dimension. But they're kind of still limited by what Webb can provide them. Same with us. Our measure of reality is limited to our senses. And so that's why when, say, someone has opened the five eyes, they can see other, they can see living beings that regular people can't see. So that's one way to understand the five skandhas. And let me see, what point was I trying to make? That's what we mistake to be the self, and that's actually what limits our um, uh, experience of what the world is, which is very, very limited. So there is a whole new way of existence beyond, that lies beyond the five skandhas. If you do it through practice, then it's called emptiness, and that's why the Prajna Paramita Sutra, the heart of Prajna Paramita Sutra, it says that Kuan Bodhisattva, no eyes, no eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or mind. That's what it refers to. It refers to a place of existence that is beyond our reality, which is why it's very hard to explain what emptiness is. Okay, sorry for taking this detour. Actually, sorry, not sorry, because it's very useful. Okay, let's go back to our slides about Mara and the Buddha. Okay. All right, here we are. Okay, so we are at the point of the story where the Buddha is helping all those poor dragons with who had who are suffering the causes, the conditions of their past causes. Okay, so last week we ended where the Buddha saved the dragon who had another dragon living in his armpit. How did that happen? Well, that was because in a former life, that dragon had borrowed money from a monk, and the monk charged a very high interest on his loan. It's very unusual, borrowing money from a monk and having a very high interest being charged. And and not only that, what he asked for from the monk, he only received a smaller sum. And out of spite, he did not pay back the monk, and the monk could not let that debt go. So in this life, after spending countless lifetimes in the hells and as hungry ghosts, being reborn in a dragon, he was born with a very wretched body. His life was as bad as a hungry ghost, basically. Okay, and not only that, that monk that whom he never paid back the debt came into his body as a parasite in his armpit. That's what happens when people owe you money and you can't let go. You end up living on their body instead. That's an extreme case. And which brings us to the point of this sutra, which is about cause and effect. In this sutra, the Buddha repeatedly warns people against committing unwholesome deeds. So let's get back to the sutra. It said, at that time, the Buddha liberated 14,000 Nagas from the terrible sufferings caused by their previous negative or unwholesome actions, and he established them in a threefold refuge. 800 million other nagas or dragons also went for refuge in the three jewels and were truly established in the three vehicles. The Buddha then said to Venerable Kandinya, if you were with us last week, you know that he's the one of the first five bhikshus under the Buddha. So he's the most, and he was the first to become an arhat. So he's considered like the great granddaddy of all monks. So Kandinya, look at how sentient beings are fooling themselves. Some use for themselves the various possessions that others have offered in search of blessings to benefit monks who abide by the Dharma. There are also some people who, fearing poverty and in order to free themselves from the prison of samsara, become renunciates. Renunciates are monastics under the teachings of blessed Buddhas of the past, but later renounce their consideration of wholesome practices and recitation. Some such degenerate beings will rob and misuse the various items that have been offered to monks who abide by the Dharma. By doing so, they will meet with suffering for a long time in the three lower realms. So the Buddha is cautioning everyone not to be lax with properties of the triple jewel. Buddha says, seeing those shortcomings, I have informed and reminded my hearers of them. Hearers here refers to the monastic disciples of the Buddha. Buddha said, none of my monks or hearers should give to householders the flowers, fruits, leaves, and plant extracts that have been offered to monks and to the Sangha of monks. So this is a caution for left-home people. They should not be enjoyed while entertaining any perception of a person. I guess here, any perception of a person, if we apply our understanding of the mistaken identity of the five skandhas as ourselves, you won't be wrong to apply it here. The Buddha continues, he says, my hearers should not engage in any trade outside the Sangha. They should not exchange and barter goods or discuss wealth. No one should settle themselves in the sufferings of the lower realms by hoarding material things. People should instead amass the Dharma and settle themselves in the four types of undivided faith, the three vehicles and the three gateways of liberation. Okay, let's explain this a bit. What the Buddha is trying to say is that as monastics, we have entered the stream. We are going against the stream in order to end birth and death. The stream represents the mundane world, and going against the stream means we do not participate in the usual behaviors of regular people. In fact, monks do not even wear regular clothes. That's one of the precepts for monks. So the Buddha is saying that's why we should not be involved in exchange of goods, bartering goods, or discussing wealth. So anything that involves like buying or selling, that usually has overtones of attachment, desire, and a greed for wealth or profit or benefit, self-benefit. So what the Buddha is saying is that as monastics, we should be experts in the Dharma. Why? Because people come to monastics for advice in the Dharma on how to apply the Dharma in everyday lives, not for, I guess, advice on how to build a table, how to be a carpenter, how to build a house, how to buy and sell land, not for advice like that, but advice that eventually will end birth and death, that will bring us happiness, that will minimize wrongdoings or unwholesome karma, and to interpret the Dharma in such a way that people can apply to everyday lives. That's what monks and nuns should be doing. Okay, and that's how Shufu set up the RBA. Shufu set up the RBA in such a way that although money is involved, monks are allowed to be monks. For example, at Berkeley Monastery, recently, a few years back, our neighbor wanted to sell the home, and Berkeley Monastery was sorely needed a way to expand itself to accommodate more people who wanted to become monks. When it came to the financial negotiation of buying the property, the monks were not involved at all. I realized that I could sit down and meditate and not have to get involved in what are current market prices, what price or value should be applied to the house, because we had a board. We had a board of professionals, people who understood how to deal in real estate, who could deal on behalf of the RBA. So the monks could remain monks, and the lay people could generate blessings and merit by contributing their skills to the RBA. Of course, in the end, the monastics have to make the decision, but they don't have to be too involved in the minute details, and can, like I said, we can do our morning, evening ceremonies, we can sit, we can do our chanting without having to think of the house, which is literally right next to us. Yeah. Okay. Coming back to the last sentence, the three gateways of liberation. What are the three gateways of liberation? The standard definition is emptiness, which is empty of self. That's to do with the five skandhas we talked about. An absence of marks. What is marks? Marks is the projection that our false thinking puts on things. So it's an absence. It's not absence of anything, not all marks, but the marks that our false mind applies onto things. Like when we get upset with a person because of something we think about that person, that's the mark, the impression that we have of other people. That's an example of a mark. And the third one is wishlessness. Wishlessness doesn't mean indolence or not just sitting there like a rock or like a piece of wood, but wishlessness here means that seeing through conditioned things, seeing through the mundane world where everything is made up of conditioned factors, and therefore not having any attachment to conditioned things. So that's what it means. Three gateways of liberation is emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. Okay, then in the sutra, Venerable Ajahata Kaundina, another name that's often used for Venerable Kaundina, he said to the Buddha, I said, Blessed One, please bless the Nagas. Please make this Dharma teaching, which involves the conduct of teaching about the inconceivable karmic action, blaze for a long time. So let everyone know about it, and may the teaching last for generations to come. Then the Buddha said, as long as the great stupas in this four-continent world still contains beings who diligently engage in practice, this Dharma teaching will continue to be practiced on the four continents. Okay, so Buddha says, yes, for that to happen, this has to happen first. So the Buddha explained, he says, all the blessed Buddhas and Bodhisattva great beings, or Maha Bodhisattva, like Guanyin, for example, who have appeared and who will appear in the countless Buddha realms in the 10 directions, have considered, thought about, and blessed those 20 great stupas in order to exhaust the karmic actions of sentient beings. So there are 20 great stupas. You can think of them like maybe the base of operations for bodhisattvas. Shofu, well, when we got CDTB, Shofu, I don't know the exact story, but Shofu said that Putolo Mountain in China was Guanin's home. Now Guanin's home is in CDTB, or maybe Guanin has two homes. Yeah, but that's what Shofu said. And then the Buddha said, all the Bodhisattva great beings, solitary Buddhas, great hearers and sages who have developed the 5 higher perceptions, that means spiritual abilities, will also recite in and bless those 20 great stupas for the sake of sentient beings and to exhaust their karmic actions. Okay, so what are the great stupas? The Buddha in this sutra, which I'm not going to share because it's too long, lists down on the 4 continents where human beings are. We are in the continent of Jambudvipa. So there are 3 other continents, and so the Buddha lists down 20 different stupas. And in this 20, every time the Buddha lists one of the great stupas, he would name a dragon king, and he would appoint the dragon king as the guardian of that place. And then the dragon king would say, yes, say, not only you have appointed me Shakyamuni Buddha, but in the past, one of the past Buddhas of antiquity has also appointed me to guard this stupa. So it goes on, the formula is repeated 20 times for 20 different stupas and 20 different dragon kings. All right. You must be wondering, what has this got to do with Mara? Well, we're coming to that. So then the Nagas replied, "Respected Blessed One, this is after all the 20 dragon kings had pledged their support to protect these 20 places. Then they said, Respected Blessed One, we dragons are severely intoxicated by the obscurations of lethargy and sleep, just like all of us here. So if we count according to human time, just one of our nights of sleep lasts for 21 human years. If those sacred sites or wise sages were threatened by danger caused by gods, humans, fire, or water while we sleep, those great stupas would be destroyed." Can you imagine how, for them, going to sleep one night is, for human beings, a period of 21 years. So if you have like a dragon friend, and you tell him, "I'll see you tomorrow," he'll come back to you 21 years later, because his tomorrow is equivalent to 21 human years. Okay. So basically what the dragons are saying is that they can't avoid sleep. They have to sleep. And what would happen if, when they're sleeping, who would protect these places? So the dragon said, "Since you will be asleep and intoxicated, we will be unable to prevent their destruction. This would be a great fault against all the Buddhas of the 3 times." Okay. Sorry for the typo. Ignore the last 3 words. And so what the Buddha did was, he called out the 28 yaksha leaders, and he says, "Take care of these great stupas, those sacred sites of wise sages that the victors always keep in mind. Look after them and protect them." The 28 great yaksha leaders agreed to protect the sacred sites of wise sages as requested, just like those who resided there in the past. What are yakshas? Yakshas, if you remember from quite a few classes back, the Shufu says that a lot of different kinds of yakshas, just like dragons, but they're usually referred to as spirits, ghosts. And if you practice the Dharma, then they become your bodyguards. They become your Dharma protecting spirits. And the yakshas, who are their leaders? The leaders are the 4 great kings from the heaven of the 4 kings. Okay. So at that moment of this sutra, 600 million Mahabodhisattvas had arrived and gathered from the different Buddha worlds. And they told the Buddha, they said, "Respected Blessed One, we shall also remain within this 4-continent world. We shall fill those sacred sites of wise sages with offerings ranging from flowers to flags, and with gold of various degrees of refinement. We shall uphold this quintessence of the sun," the name of this sutra, "the Dharani mantra that purifies karmic action, and reveal it to others. We shall teach it extensively. We shall reflect on and abide by the Dharani mantra that the Blessed One has taught, that was shared last week." They continued saying, 10 million Maras have assembled here today. So we tend to think of our world as kind of like the only world, and it's the only world the Buddha has. But as we have found out, in one Buddha land, okay, like Shakyamuni's Buddha land, there are a total of 1 billion worlds actually. So we are not the only people giving the Buddhas and like Wanin Bodhisattva a hard time. There are a lot more. So 10 million Maras have assembled here today, as have an innumerable and limitless number of gods, nagas, yakshas, suras, garudas, kinnaras, and mahoragas. What's the term for this? If I think of it, I'll share. The Blessed One has placed the protection of all those great stupas, those sacred sites of wise sages, in the hands of the dragons and the yakshas. However, since the minds of the Maras, the gods, the kinnaras, and the asuras have changed, the Blessed One declared, "I now entrust the protection of those sacred sites of wise sages to pure beings." But perhaps the Blessed One is not aware that now or in the future, other beings such as humans might harm, demolish, and destroy these great stupas. That would not be good. That referring to what comes to mind is when was it Afghanistan, where they had this really tall. There were three Buddha images that were really tall and carved of stone into the mountain, and the was it the Taliban? They destroyed it with bombs. I think maybe something like that. Yeah. So the Buddha replied, he said, "Excellent, noble sons, excellent, but do not be afraid, do not be scared. After all, I am the Buddha." So he said, the Buddhas, perfect Buddhas of the past, have blessed all those great stupas, those sacred sites of wise sages, and they have entrusted their protection to the Nagas and Yakshas. Similarly, I do as well in order to purify the karmic obscurations of those who have attained the eight unfree states, to create the causes of the happiness of emancipation, to generate the conditions and the manifestation of everything needed to sustain sentient beings, to cause the growth of medicinal plants and forests, to make a variety of fruits ripen, and to pacify untimely winds and rains. So the Buddha reveals why the stupas are important is because of people, people kind of like us, um, who the Buddha describes as, let me see, the eight unfree states. What does that mean? That means beings who are in the realms of the hells, the hungry ghosts, animals, even the human realm and the gods realm, and then barbarians or extremists, and in places where the Buddhist teachings do not exist. So basically, where, if I guess barbarian or extremist means you hold your view on externalist views are so strong that you have the Dharma, you have the opportunity to listen to the Dharma, but you have no affinities with the Dharma. And where the Buddhist teachings do not exist, that can be considered different continents, apart from Jambudvipa, like Uttara Kuru, where the Dharma does not exist. The teachings of the Dharma do not exist. Or, for example, where we are, there are certain countries where it's really, really hard to, you can't just Google a temple where there's a monastic or where Buddhism is practiced and walk in and find out more. Yeah. And the last one is without adequate facilities to understand the teachings where they do exist. So either you can't hear, or it could be a lack of affinities where you listen to the teachings but you don't remember anything because maybe you have no interest. Okay. So the Buddha said, furthermore, whether in the past or in the future, all the great stupas where the Buddha is born are sacred places for the world with its gods. And the Buddha says the same is true for those places where they exert themselves in concentration in the forest of ascetics, awaken to perfect Buddhahood and turn the wheel of Dharma. The same is true for those places where the Buddha Dharma's bodies or born or his transformation bodies are located, where the Buddha's hearers, that means the monastic disciples of the Buddha reside, and where my Dharma way remains. I also entrust the protection of those great stupas to the Maras, gods, Nagas, Yakshas, and Asuras. Um, uh, if you ever wondered where would you find an arhat, a sage, someone who very advanced in a practice, if you really want to meet them, these 20 great stupas will be a great way to meet them. But if you rely on your physical 2 feet, you might have a problem getting there. Let me see what's on this slide, because we're running out of time. Okay, so then in this part of the sutra, the Buddha teaches a mantra. If you are interested in the mantra, you can look up this sutra online and get into it. We won't be reciting the mantra because I don't really know how to. But this is the sutra. So Saha has a question: where is the 20 stupas? If you want to meet an arhat, well, Saha some of it are not physically reachable by us. You need to have the ability to fly. You can say it's kind of like in a different dimension. It's beyond the scope of our of our flesh eye to see. Some of it, I think, is located halfway up Mount Sumeru. So look up the sutra, and you will see the list of 20 stupas. So the Buddha shares this mantra, kind of like the Shurangama Sutra, and the Buddha gives a list of benefits the benefits of this sutra. And then the Buddha says, now and in the future, if Mara gods, Nagas, Yakshas, I remember the term for this, the eightfold pantheon of gods and spirits. That's how Shofu explained it to us. So the Buddha says, now and in the future, if anyone, attempt to harm, destroy, or demolish those great stupas with water, fire, or any other hostile means, says you should focus your attention on the Buddhas of the three times past, present, and future, and with a loving attitude. I think that's key. With a loving attitude towards all sentient beings, you must recollect this great teaching, which accomplishes all absorptions and repels all hostile beings. So you don't do it out of anger or spite or animosity against people who are trying to harm these places and the people who are practicing there, but with an attitude of loving kindness. And then the Buddha said, if you do so, it will generate faith in their minds, and henceforth they will no longer attempt to destroy those places. So this is kind of like a summary of this sutra, where you have Mara trying to destroy the Buddha, Mara and his retinue, and then they try to get the dragons to fight against the Buddha. But the Buddha manages, through loving kindness, to bring them all onto the path instead. And the Buddha says something really important. The Buddha says, noble sons, in the world with its gods and all its beings, I have never seen anyone who did not turn away from negativity and abandon unwholesome actions after having heard this great teaching, which accomplishes all absorptions and repels all hostile beings, apart from those who hold on to past enmity. So if you cannot forgive and you cannot let go, like that monk who was owed money and ended up being a parasite, it would be really, really hard for the Dharma to benefit you. Okay. All right. So now we come to Mara. All right. So at this part of the sutra, it says, oh, as this teaching was being expounded by the Blessed One, the gods, Nagas, Yakshas, etc., who had sincere faith in the Blessed One were overjoyed and became ecstatic, and they developed utmost faith in him. At that same time, through the miraculous power of the Blessed One, the evil Mara himself. So where was Mara during all this time? If you remember, his daughters deserted him and went to the Buddha to seek refuge. His generals went on his behalf to try to get the dragons to fight the Buddha, but were converted to the became bodhisattvas instead, because they remembered their past lives where they truly cultivated, and then they felt ashamed, and then they say, okay, from now on we will never abandon the path. And so Mara was kind of left all alone, to the extent that he ordered the gates of his heaven shut so no one could leave. That's how miserable Mara was. But because of the Buddha's miraculous powers, although he was shut up, he shut himself up in his palace, Mara could hear this teaching. And when he heard it, intense appreciation, faith, and respect for the Blessed One arose in him. Okay, there's a twist. With tears in his eyes, he said to his retinues, he said, listen to my words. The great dragons and gods on that sacred and splendorous mountainside, which is filled with worms which Mara created to afflict the dragons, by the way, have asked the wise sage, the sublime victor, who is endowed with supreme acceptance, qualities, and expression for forgiveness. I will also go there and ask that peerless spiritual practitioner for forgiveness. I will go for refuge in him. Come with me and take refuge in that forgiving victor who possesses such great and incomparable love. Come and listen to his Dharma, which cannot be illustrated. Sever the web of your afflictions and enter the city of purity and fearlessness. So Mara had a change of heart. The evil Mara and the 800 million members of his retinue then prostrated to the feet of the Blessed One and said, Sublime human, great pacifier, please forgive us, pernicious beings, through your mighty tolerance. So now the way they address the Buddha is very different. In past classes, in the beginning of the sutra, they would address the Buddha by his name, which is not a respectful way of addressing someone. But now they address the Buddha with honorific terms. And so they ask for forgiveness, and they ask 3 times for forgiveness, showing their sincerity. And the Blessed One, the Buddha, replied to the evil Mara. He said, I am devoid of anger and all the other afflictions, and I am always impartial towards all beings. Mara, I rejoice in your attitude. The victor is tolerant, he always forgives. Filled with intense joy and faith, that means Mara also realized that although he had planned all this against the Buddha, never at one moment did the Buddha have any ill will against Mara. So the evil Mara prostrated to the feet of the Blessed One and circumambulated him 3 times. He then sat down, gazing one-pointedly at the Blessed One. Okay, so from here on, okay, let me see, what should I share? Okay, before I show this slide. Okay, so from here, for those who are interested in the sutra, there's a teaching given by the Buddha based on the question that one of Mara's followers asked. Basically, the question that was asked is regarding the eye. And he said, he asked the Buddha, he said, regarding the eye, he said, do we have eyes because of things that we see? Or are things we see, how you say, or is the eye responsible for the things that we see? That means, is everything that we see due to the eye? And he repeats this questioning for the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and then the mind itself. That's about thoughts. Okay, so there's a section where the Buddha explains this. And then we come to the conclusion of the sutra. Actually, the sutra is really, really long. It's kind of, maybe not as long as the Shurangama Sutra, but maybe half, yeah. So one of the, wait, let me see, Sagara. I think, yeah, Sagara is a dragon king. So Sagara is a dragon king that the poor dragon that had who borrowed money from the monk. Okay, that character, in the life where he borrowed money, he was a prince, and he became a monk. No, is that right? No, he wasn't a prince, but Sagara was the king during that lifetime, and Sagara was very generous with the Buddha at that time, not Shakyamuni Buddha, one of the past Buddhas, and his how you say, the monastic disciples. Okay, so this is that Sagara that we are seeing here. He's a dragon king. So Buddha said, he asked the Buddha, I said, respected Blessed One, how much merit does a noble son or daughter who listens one-pointedly to this great instruction of the quintessence of the sun generate? Now you know why I'm sharing so much of this sutra with you. Okay. The Blessed One replied, Nagalord, imagine that someone filled this entire 4-continent world with all kinds of precious gems and offered it to the dust gone ones, or to the Buddhas. So 4-continent world is not just, you think about our world, like Earth, with all our different lands, the Americas, the different continents, the continent of Australia, Southeast Asia, Asia, and all that. The Buddha means something greater, because it's not just our Earth, but the other 3 continents as well. So what says you fill the whole place, okay, with precious gems, and you offer it to a Buddha. And the Buddha says, if another being listens with one pointed attention to the complete great instruction of the quintessence of the sun in its entirety, the amount of merit generated by the former being would not match even 100, 1,000, or 1,000,000,000,000 of the merit generated by the latter person. In fact, no number, fraction, analogy, or illustration would come close. Such is the scale of merit generated merely by hearing this sutra. Okay, congratulations, all of you. But to make it complete, go look for this sutra online. But, now you have a sense. So the Buddha now starts to list down 10 things, 10 benefits. Okay, what are the 10 benefits? The Buddha says the homes and lands in those places will be filled with plenty of wealth, grains, possessions, and valuables, and with all kinds of precious gems. Okay. Number 2, 600 million great bodhisattvas will come to meet, revere, worship, and serve all the homes and lands that they will completely and they will completely pacify all disputes, fights, epidemics, diseases, famines, and the two kinds of armies, as well as untimely winds, rains, and illnesses. So Saha had a question about where the 20 great stupas are. Well, if you adhere to the teachings of this sutra, or basically the teachings of the Dharma, then wherever you go, you can consider yourself to be kind of like a mini stupa where you are protected. Okay. Number 3, Shakra, Brahma, the 4 great kings, the 28 yaksha leaders and the retinues, Sri Mahadevi, the great goddess, Saravasti, the earth goddess, Stavara, and the medicine goddess, accomplished one, and her retinue will continuously, day and night, look after and protect the homes and lands where this great instruction of the quintessence of the sun is written down. Okay. Beings who have revered many Buddhas in the past, who are powerful and renowned for their great strength, and who are endowed with perfect generosity, discipline, and restraint, will take birth in all those homes and lands. Your offspring, if you are going to have any, will be very wholesome people. In those homes, sentient beings who are attached to the pleasures of the 5 senses will constantly exert themselves in the perfection of generosity. So even people who find it really hard to when they read the Buddha's teachings about attachments and desires, and they just find it hard. It's just, like, how do you not get attached to good food? Isn't what good food is all about? They're at that stage of their practice. The Buddha says even those people will then find great happiness in generosity. I found a quote about generosity that goes something like, let me see. Generosity is, I can't remember right now, but if I do, I will make sure I share it. It's a very eloquent quote. So, let me see. It says generosity. Generosity is the gift that provides its own gifts. Okay? Meaning, if you practice generosity, you will find that there are a lot of benefits to generosity. And there's a story about how at CDTB, they all went to the dining hall one day, and they found Shufu there, smiling down at them. And at every sitting place, there was a piece of white rabbit candy. If any one of you has tried white rabbit candy, it's a milky candy that's wrapped in rice paper that you can eat. It dissolves, the wrapping dissolves in the mouth. So Shufu said, someone gave me my favorite candy, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. And precisely because it's my favorite candy, that's why I'm sharing it with all of you. And then Shufu said, do you understand? So for anyone who has tried to, for anyone who has, out of wholesomeness, okay, spontaneously shared what is most special to you, okay, what you find most most valuable, either in terms of taste like candy, or valuable in terms of monetary terms, or what do you call it, what's that emotional term? There's a term for something that means something to you, but not value, but the value is emotional, something like that. And you try sharing it and pay attention to how you feel, because human behavior, I would say that maybe for some people the instinct is not to share, is to hoard it for yourself. Why? Because it's a favorite thing. Favorite things have, there's a reason why it's called your favorite thing, because you want more of it and you want more of it for yourself. But if you've ever had the rare opportunity of sharing what is dearest to you and paying close attention to how it feels afterwards, you would understand that story. Okay. Let me see. Number 6, they will delight in those who are suitable recipients of generosity. You see anyone you help, you actually feel happy for them. There's delight there. Number 7, those places will be continuously pervaded by a rain of rich Dharma water, meaning you will always have access to the Buddha's wisdom. Number 8, the sentient beings living in those places will always exert themselves in following the paths of the 10 virtuous actions, 10 wholesome deeds. What are 10 wholesome deeds? They're the opposite of the 10 unwholesome deeds. I'm not trying to be funny, but that's how they're defined. What are the 10 unwholesome deeds? Well, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, gossip, jealousy, ill will, and wrong views. So don't do any of that, and you will be following the 10 wholesome actions. Number 9, the sentient beings living in those places will always be loving, compassionate, and free of desires. Number 10, sentient beings living in all those homes and lands will leave the 3 lower realms behind and be born within the higher realms. Okay, so do we have any questions at this point while I look for a sutra to answer Ron's question? Anyone? Yes, Saha, please go ahead.
Amito for Dharma Master. If we do one of the unwholesome deeds, is there any way to truly repent and be clear of the karma that's associated with it? I know with mantras and sutras, it explains about that. If you could please explain more about it. Thanks.
Okay. Actually, Saha, the last few classes have been about that, about how the about how the Buddha was able to save all these dragons who were reborn in the state. They had kind of the suffering of the hungry ghost. They were physically and mentally not far off what a hungry ghost was. It's just that they were still in the body of a dragon. And it was because that they repented that they were able to avert further disaster for themselves. And because I've explained this, I won't go into great detail. One of it is by truly repenting and reforming. The karmic seeds that you plant, either through your vows or through your constant reminder not to do unwholesome deeds anymore, not only do they plant new habits or new karmic seeds, but they also have the ability of perfuming. Ability of perfuming means that in everyday experience, perfuming means the ability to recall your intentions, your wholesome intentions, and to put them into practice. If we explain it in terms of seeds, it would mean that you make a vow, it means you plant a karmic seed, but you are so full of conviction and your intention is very, very strong. You're very sincere. Sincere means you want it really, really badly. It gives that karmic seed a very strong perfuming nature. And that single seed can perfume and influence all the seeds that are nearby or further away, depending on the strength of your vow. So say someone vows not to steal anymore, okay? And their perfuming is very strong because maybe they just got released from prison for stealing, had a horrible time and they vow never to do it again. And The moment he comes out of prison, he sees a bag left unattended with $10,000. And because he just came out of prison, he has no money, he doesn't know how to survive. And the first thought that comes to him is like, oh, with that money, I can create a new life for myself. And he thinks about stealing the money. But because of his perfuming nature, along with that thought comes also the recollection of his vow to never steal again. So that's an example of the perfuming nature at work. The second set is you prevent the conditions for certain karmic seeds to arise. For example, taking the 5 precepts. Taking the 5 precepts can affect your future conditions either through your mind or through actual physical conditions. For example, no taking of intoxicants means you will never, the chances of you walking into a bar, for example, a place that only serves alcohol, is very, very low because you would have basically no reason to do that. So in a very simplistic way of explaining, any karmic seed that's connected with happening in the bar, say someone drunk comes and punch you for no apparent reason, does not happen because you don't go to a place where there are people drunk enough to do that and has affinities with you to punch you in the face. So you can look at the precepts as one of the functions of precepts is to prevent the conditions of unwholesome karma to take place. Okay, so go back and listen to the last 3 classes, Saha, where I explain in more detail. Okay. Okay, I have this sutra here. Let me see. I'm not sure if this is... Okay, let me quickly share it. Wait, once... I'm not sure if this is the right one, but this is what came to my search. It's called the Sutra of Vasita. Okay, and so basically the Buddha came across a mendicant called Vasita who for 1 month he had a haggard experience, and because he was he said he observed a month-long fast. I'm not sure what this month-long fast is. So what the Buddha did was he talked about holding the 8 precepts. And this person is not a disciple of the Buddha. So the Buddha is basically explaining to someone who's not a disciple. The Buddha said, those Brahmins who observe the 8 precepts will experience all the wished for among gods and humans. Okay. And what are gods? Let me see. Buddha explains. Okay, so here the Buddha explains. And then this sutra, which I encourage Ron or anyone who's interested to find out, talks about the benefits of holding the 8 precepts or observing the fasting days. Okay, but instead of explaining this sutra, which you can find online, I'll just show you the title of the sutra again and you can look it up. The Noble Sutra of Vasita. Okay, you can look it up and find it for yourself. I'll just explain what you're supposed to do or what the 8 precepts represent. All right. So the 8 precepts are the 5 precepts, which I hope everyone is familiar with. All right. And on top of the 5 precepts, you have the precept of, let me see, not eating afternoon. Okay. So that's the precept number 6. That means after lunch, you stop eating. And then there's a precept against not listening to music or entertainment. No watching of TV, preferably no reading or newspapers. And I explain why, in the sense that instead of giving you a hard and fast rule, I'll explain the spirit behind the precept so you can make your own judgment on what works best for you. There's one precept that is against adorning the body, makeup, perfume, making yourself smell good, it includes like putting on really nice clothes to make yourself attractive to the opposite sex. So it has to do with desire and thoughts associated with desire. And the last one is no sleeping on a high, comfortable bed, large, high, comfortable bed. How to make sense of the sleeping on the floor? What benefits do sleeping on the floor make? You know, just keeping to the 8 precepts strictly, you know, by itself bring benefits. You know, in that case, one might argue that certain beggars or homeless people, you know, who just so happen maybe on that day or week they practice being a vegetarian, they don't steal, they don't lie, they don't take any drugs or intoxicants, you know, they sleep on the ground, they don't sleep on a comfortable bed. Some Most of them find it hard to find facilities to wash themselves, you know, so they don't adorn themselves very well, they don't wear beautiful clothes, they find it hard to make themselves smell good, you know. Some may find it difficult to find food, so don't talk about dinner, sometimes they may go hungry the whole day, which if you take the precepts seriously, isn't that a better thing? You know, doesn't that make them more ascetic? So does that mean that someone like that, like perhaps like a homeless person, will um, uh, derive benefits from the 8 precepts? So basically what the 8 precepts are meant to do is they're meant to create the conditions where you practice. And what do you practice? Practice meditation. You practice calming the mind. You can do recitation of the Buddha's name. You can do recitation of a mantra. So basically the first 5 precepts are meant to give you a stable foundation where you have few regrets because your speech is proper. You don't simply scold people. You don't indulge in gossip or lying. You don't steal anything. So as you're sitting there trying to meditate, someone knocks on your door. If you had stole something and someone knocks on your door, you know, it's like you have this anxiety. Is the police there? Is the owner of that thing there? But if you don't do anything wrong, then your mind naturally becomes calm. All right. So the first 5 precepts do that. The precept of not eating afternoon is to make sure that you don't eat too much at lunch, because why are you going to meditate? You're going to meditate the whole day. And anyone who's meditated before, if they want to meditate on that day, they will naturally not eat a lot if meditation is a priority, because they know how it feels. It fills up the stomach, you feel lethargic, you find it really hard to concentrate, and you just feel like you want to take a nap. Okay, so someone who meditates, they will not eat a lot. And then desire or thoughts of the other sex. Well, if you're meditating, you're not going to have any excuse to put up makeup and then meditate, you know, or comb your hair to meditate. Why do you need to do that? You know, there's no one's going to look at you. And no sleeping on a high bed, okay, is about comfort. So if you have observed yourself this whole hour, or observe yourself in the next 10, 15 minutes or the next 1 hour, you find that it becomes automatic. Every time we feel physical discomfort, say like we are sitting down, we shift, we move our weight, we fidget. Any restlessness that we get, we physically apply ourselves to remove that discomfort. We're always seeking for comfort. So even now, like I'm speaking to you, I'm shifting my weight so that I somehow either feel more comfortable because I feel discomfort creeping in. So we do it to an extent that it becomes part of our life. That's what we kind of spend. Human beings spend a huge amount of their lives seeking comfort, running away from discomfort. But that works against you when you're trying to meditate. When you're trying to enter samadhi, you can't be, you know, creaking your neck, adjusting your posture every 5 minutes, you know, feel a bit of discomfort, you adjust your cushion, you stretch. You're not supposed to do that when you meditate, because if you do, then you're not meditating at all, and you will never ever enter samadhi. So that's just a reminder of not to seek after comfort when you meditate, because it's going to work against you, and also to meditate into the night. That's why you don't have a high, comfortable bed. You sit on the floor, if possible. Um, Buddha says that you meditate through there are, let me see, 6 periods of the day and night, 3 periods for the day, 3 periods for the night. And out of the 3 periods of the night, only 1 period you spend resting. And the other 2 periods you are supposed to spend meditating. So it's not an easy thing to do. Hence the precept against a high and comfortable bed. All right. So that's the spirit of the precepts. Someone who's very experienced in meditation and know themselves well, you could almost say that they will naturally adhere to those precepts willingly. It's not a bother at all. You know, they're not going to listen to their favorite song or watch their favorite drama or whatever it is and stir up their emotions or plant a jingle in their head that they cannot get rid of, and then go sit and meditate. And you're just being counterproductive. You want to be as calm as possible. You want to avoid arguments. You don't want to hear any bad news that that has a hold on you before you meditate. So that's the spirit of the 8 precepts. Okay. And Ron, in this sutra, the Buddha talked about how if you fill up the 4 continents of the world with jewels, it does not even compare to the merit of a person who puts this sutra into practice. Well, that's kind of how the Buddha describes the merits of following the fasting days as well. All right. So which is why everyone should take at least 1 day a month. If you're not already doing it, try 1 day of the month. Plus, plant those kami seeds in yourself. Try to figure out how it feels like. Give yourself the opportunity to discover yourself in that way. All right. Okay, we have to go, or rather, I have to go to make sure I can conduct the meal offering, and I'm going to make an announcement that we're going to put a hold to classes because it's end of the year. I've been waiting a long time to do my own retreat, and since next week I'll be in Singapore, I guess this is the best time to announce that we'll take a break, and that we'll probably resume in January. Okay. Yeah. Probably resume in January. If you don't hear from me in January, hopefully it's because I have found my way to one of the 20 great stupas. Okay, but we'll resume in January. Okay. All right. Let's dedicate merit. Let me find the slides to dedicate merit. Where is it? Opening dedication. Anyone with any final questions or remarks? No? Okay. I'm going to invite everyone to put our palms together. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong one. Okay, there you go. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave our grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows to the Buddha. Okay, first bow. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, before I go, I just have a question. James Nguyen, are you the James Nguyen from DRBU? Or formerly from DRBU? Okay, all right, great. All right, so we'll questions through the WhatsApp group will still be taken. So if you have any questions, we can still use the WhatsApp group. If not, then we will meet online again. We will announce in the WhatsApp group, but it should be in January. Okay, all right. Amita for everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dhamma Master.